Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Artist Over Actor, where we talk about the tenets of how to be a wonderful artist and how to bring artistry into acting. I'm your host, Javon Henry. I'm a full-time voiceover artist, and I teach the tenets of how I became a voice actor so I can help other people get into the wonderful realm of voice acting. So let's make sure that we can all hear today. All right, just like that, we are in fact getting audio. Perfect. All right, so today we're going to be going over the mindset of a voiceover artist. What actually makes a voiceover artist in today's world? What actually are the substantive tips and tools that a voice actor can use in order to go ahead and forge their career? And when it comes to artistry, a little bit of a background history. I've been a voiceover artist, a photographer, a classically trained musician, a recording studio engineer. I've ran and operated my own recording studio. I've done a bunch of things. And it's really funny to see how all of these things come together to equal out to the same thing. When you are an artist, the thing that you have first and foremost is your interpretation and your approach. Those are the two things that you are doing in any gig that you get, whether that be photography, videography, audio engineering, voice acting, anything that you do. Your approach is your calling card. It is what sets you apart and what makes you different. So let's go ahead and launch into a little bit about the mindset that makes a voice actor or an artist in general. All right. Number one, these are all from my perspective. So, as I always say, take what works and leave what doesn't. But number one, you aren't working to get a gig. Your job is to audition and to train. Now, when I first got into voice acting, I never really understood what people meant when they said this. Like, the job isn't to actually get the job, but the job is to audition for the job. I never really understood what people meant when they said that. But now I do. Being a voice actor for the last 4 years, good morning, friendly. I hope that everything's well with you. Being a voice actor for the last 4 years really solidified the fact that your job is to audition to get a job. And what I mean by that is whenever you have an audition in the queue, whenever you have a gig that's ready to roll, your job is simply to formulate your approach, do that gig, do that audition, and then let it go because there's nothing that's going to come there's nothing good that's going to come from you lingering and holding on to an audition. And yes, that can be a lot harder said than done. I've had auditions in the past where I really, really wanted to get the gig. It was for a big time, either TV show, animation, big time commercial. It was working with a client who I absolutely loved. But one thing that's very important is understanding that you don't have a say on whether or not you are going to be right for that gig. You can be doing everything perfectly fine. You can have great audio. You can have a great approach. You can have a great um, breaking down of that script and delivery of the script. But on the other side of that is a entire team of people. You've got a casting director, you've got your clients, you've got people who are listening to hundreds of these different minute pieces. And the thing about it is, they might be looking for one thing that you don't know in your approach that is what makes you not get that gig. Maybe they want a slight Southern accent, but they didn't put that in the listing, but they didn't know that they wanted that. And somebody actually delivered that because they just have a Southern drawl and they're the ones who got the gig. That has nothing to do with you. That's not something that you could ever anticipate or work for, but I've seen that time and time and time again. So understand that all you can do is audition and let it go. And that's one of the biggest things that I preach when it comes to voiceover. One of the best feelings is either getting a callback or just being put on the short list. Because in either of those situations, you know that it was your audio, it was your approach, it was your actual trying to get the gig, your actual laying it down, recording it, and submitting it. And you know you have a little bit of feedback that it went pretty well. Even if you don't get the gig, you now have that little bit of feedback. But understanding that auditioning is your gig, and that's really hard to wrap your head around. And yeah, there is no gig that is too small. I've seen A lot of bastardization about the topic in voiceover. It's really strange. The people saying that, like, oh, you only do commercials, so that you're not a legitimate voice actor, or oh, you only do indie projects, so you're not a legitimate voiceover artist. None of that is true. If you are lending your voice to a project, you are a voiceover artist, tried and true, and that is the beginning, the middle, and the end of it. No matter what gig you're doing, there is no gig too small. Number two, you can and should be making your own work. So I am ready to die on this hill. As artists, it is our creative identity to want to do something, to bring something into the world. We want to create something, and we want to have the ability to have other people not even just see that something, but just bring it into the world and be able to share it with other people. They can formulate their opinion on whether or not they like it, but your creation is yours that you get to share with the rest of the world. Now, one of the most important things is a lot of voice actors who I mentor, who I speak with, they're like, oh, I want to work with this company. I want to work with Nickelodeon. I want to work with Disney. I want to work with Cartoon Network. I want to work with this, that, or the other. Marvel, name them. But they don't do their own projects. They don't work in indie. They don't create their own work that breathes what they want to do. And the question that I always ask is, why, until you get to that point, don't you do other things? Why don't you make other things? Why don't you practice just writing something that's in the scope of what you want to do? Because here's the magic thing that comes. When you do that, you are preparing yourself for when you do get those opportunities. Because let's say Disney comes knocking on your door and they want you in a Marvel movie, but you've never done anything in the scope, in the breadth of that before. You will be unprepared to do these types of gigs. Now, if you have a track record of practicing this style, writing this style, having acted in these indie types of styles before, even having done like little gigs like that, then what you're going to see is that you're going to be prepared for when those large gigs come along. You're going to be prepared for when those large gigs give you a call. You can say, oh, I have this in my portfolio. I've done this before. I know how to actually do this, aside from just getting on set, getting behind a microphone and being like, oh, I don't really have that much accuracy behind it. So, as an artist, it's not just up to you to audition and wait for other people to give you a gig. You can be and should be making your own work. Whether that is you're a multidisciplinary artist like myself and you make music and you draw and you paint or you take pictures, you're a photographer or a videographer, you should just be making your own art so that you can prepare yourself creatively for when those bigger gigs do come along. What's up, Neo? I'm going to binge all your videos soon, man. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. For the next thing, AAA and major works are great. Indie is amazing. Now, what do I mean by this? One of the things that a lot of people don't really fully realize before getting in this industry is when you go the AAA video game route, when you go the major production route, a lot of things are already set in stone. You don't necessarily have a lot of room to be a creative collaborator. Now, you get to let your own creativity shine. You get to do some of your own aspects. Like a lot of the time, improv is really big, especially in like commercials and in some video games. They like you to have a little bit of a comedic improv background so you can bring that script to life. But a lot of the choices are locked in, they're ready to go, and they've been approved by a billion people. So if you want to make a change, that needs to be approved by a billion people. When you go with indie, like I typically love to do, a lot of those choices are free. There's a more collaborative air. Yes, it's a smaller team. Maybe it won't be able to get in front of a billion people, but you're going to be able to feel and make your individual impact as you're speaking directly with the developers, as you're speaking directly with the head creator of the game, as you're speaking with the head creator of the project. You're going to be able to make more of these creative decisions. Now, not all the time, this isn't set in stone, but understand that, yes, major AAA games and major productions, whether that be in animation or whether that be in voiceover commercials, whatever, what have you, are great. I've done a lot of them. I've worked with Focus Games, I've worked with the Disney, I've worked with Marvel. It's great. However, Just because you're working on indie productions doesn't make you any less of a voiceover artist. And this is something that I've seen quite often. Indie productions are wonderful. Indie doesn't mean small, it means independent. It is simply another type of project where you can let your creativity shine. So understand that the buck does not stop with AAA or major productions. Now, this is something that I never really got until about 3 months ago. I was on a call with some casting directors, and they let forth a little nugget that I think is absolutely incredible. Getting a leading role in a production is not about skill, it's about trust. Now, what does that mean? If you are a leading role in a production, the whole production stops with you. So that means if you are sick, if you can't pull out the creative flow, if you have issues, the production is shut down. Everything. And there are millions of dollars riding on these AAA productions. You need to recoup your investment. These are art pieces, yes, but they're more investment vehicles for the major studios who put them on. So when you're casting, and you have someone who's a lead role, yes, there's a little bit of star power that goes into it. Of course, they want somebody who has the names to put people's butts in the chairs. However, it's about trust. Can you carry this whole team on your back and not drop the ball? This is why when you go to high school and college productions, you can have a freshman who is absolutely phenomenal. They have perfect pitch. They are great with acting. They understand how to bring forth the character. And maybe they will get a understudy for the lead. But 9 times out of 10, they're not going to get the lead role. Why? Because there is no understanding of the trust that they can actually carry the full weight of a production on their shoulders. So when you're going out for a leading role and you don't necessarily have the large resume underneath you, it's not about you just not being good. It's not about you not being able to show them that you can do it. It's about them not physically being able to get that you can actually hold this production on your shoulders. That is what the resume and the backlog of work does. It shows them, oh, you've been cast in this, that, or the other, and you've worked your way slowly up. And I have good calls or good faith that you can hold this production on your shoulders. And with all of that information, I think I can trust you in a lead role. Now, that can also come from the perception of, oh, I've spoken with you a bunch of times before. I know who you are. I absolutely enjoy your work. Yeah, I can trust you. It doesn't have to just come from a resume. You can just know the director, know the casting director on the project, and then they can trust that you can do it. But understand that it's not necessarily about you being good. It's about them knowing that you can handle the responsibility of being the lead on a project. True. A lot of people say I'm not a real VA because I've only done indie projects. I want you to understand that that is them putting their vision of what voiceover is on you. I know plenty of professional voice actors who only work in indie because that's their preferred medium, because it is a more creative path. It is a more fulfilling for them path. I know plenty of voice actors who only do commercials because that is a more fulfilling path for them. They hate animation. They hate video games. They love just doing commercial work. Or they just love doing trailers. I know people who legitimately just do movie trailers, and that's all that they do. And that's what they love to do. Doing indie work makes you no less of a voiceover artist, and it makes you no less of an actor. That's them putting their vision on you. And uh, I don't prescribe to that whatsoever. And I suggest that you don't either, because that doesn't mean anything. If you can't do it alone, don't expect anyone to hire you to do it. So this kind of goes back into the whole, you need to be working on making your own projects. If you can't do it alone, don't expect anyone to hire you to do it. The film industry, the voiceover market, this job is one that is very much so not about people giving you the shot. It is about you being able to make it on your own. The whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, I don't prescribe to, but it's about you being able to have the drive and the want to go out and create something on your own. And then you will be able to create something collaboratively with others. Now, I don't mean that you have to literally go out and do something by your own. If you're a photographer, I don't mean go out and do a series of self portraits until somebody finds you and they're like, oh, I want a self portrait that's like the one that you did of yourself. You can, of course, work with the whole team, but it's your project. Being able to create something on your own is pivotal in this field because that sets you up for the success of being able to work with other people. You shouldn't be working towards, or you should be working towards your craft every week. So I highly recommend you go back to my last video. The last live stream I did last Monday was about how practicing every day is not necessarily the best way to approach anything creatively, anything in life. Practicing every day can also help you reinforce the wrong way to practice, but you should be working towards your craft every single day. What do I mean by that? I mean, pick up a book and read a book out loud. As a voiceover artist, I can tell you full stop that you're going to be doing a lot of cold reading, a lot of cold reading. And if you stumble over words, if you flub sentences, if you get lost in text, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to comprehensively do this job sometimes. So picking up a book, reading out loud, recording yourself reading out loud, listening to it back so that you can scrutinize yourself, boom, takes 10, 15 minutes a day. That is all that it takes. Or maybe you want to go and look over a script, read down a script, and try and ascertain what the point of that script is in one topic sentence. So you write the topic sentence, you write the leading actions that lead you up to the climax, you write what the climax is, and you write the descending action, and you write down the closing. So you read through a whole 10-page script, and then you write out a sentence for each of those. So that way you can really start to break down a story structure. So that way when you're approaching a script, you can flow through that script a little bit better. Boom, 20, 30 minutes a day. Doing these small steps every day will lead it so that when you do pick up a script, you can easily read through it once and go, okay, these are the leading actions. Okay, I know how to read this out loud. I'm not going to screw up. Okay, let me record this and let me go. And even if you're not doing cold reading, which I don't do cold reading every single day, but a lot of the time when I'm auditioning for stuff, because of those skills that I've set up, I can just pick up a script, read it down, get it into my DAW, and send it off to a client in like 10, 15 minutes. And 90% of the time, they say, this sounds fantastic because I've set myself up for success in those other tools with those other things that I have done. And if you are looking for a couple of these tools, a couple of different methodologies that I use in breaking down a script, please feel free to head over to my website. That is www. Let me actually add this in the chat. I have free templates, free materials that'll help you become a better voice actor. Let me go ahead and put this in the chat for you guys. Vox.com/education. All of this stuff is free, and I hope that you guys get something out of it. You can just go ahead and download any of these materials. I set up a new website. I was using Send Owl before, but I realized that even though my stuff was free on Sendowl, it still charged me at the end of the month based on how many people downloaded. So I was giving away all my stuff for free. Hundreds of people would download it. And then at the end of the month, I would get a bill for like $70. So I just moved everything over to my own website. So that way I don't get charged and you guys still get free stuff. So I hope that you guys enjoy any of that stuff over there. Next point that is really important to understand. Your artistry is built outside of your craft. And this is going to be one of the weirdest things. It took me years to be able to understand this, fully grasp this, and institute this into my life. For those of you who don't know, I actually recently traveled the country with my fiance. We spent the last 6 months in a travel trailer. We went from Georgia all the way out to Los Angeles. And every 2 weeks, we stopped in between. So we stopped in Oklahoma, we stopped in Arizona, we went to the Grand Canyon, we stopped in a bunch of places. And I started to notice that my auditions were landing a lot more. I felt a lot more connected to my scripts, a lot more connected to my reads. I felt like I was in it a lot more, and it was a lot of fun to be able to do. And as I was reading a book on creativity and approach and speaking with my mentors and my tutors, I learned one very important thing. Living your life outside of your craft is what builds your artistry to be able to perform your craft better. Now, what the hell does all of those random words mean? Because I was traveling and living my life and enjoying and seeing new things, I had new perspectives to bring into my work. And that is one of the most important things. You can't sit in a dark room from 9 to 5 every day, reading down scripts and expect yourself to be able to bring life to an actual text that you read. You need to actually live your life so that you can bring a perspective into the work that you're doing. Let me give you another example. I have been a classically trained clarinetist for the last 14 years. And it wasn't until college, so 10 years into that, that I fully found my strive in playing my instrument. Now, why is that? In college, I took a form class, and in that form class, I discovered romantic music, the romantic style of music. And I fell in love with romantic music. I fell in love with Brahms. I fell in love with all of these romantic composers in that time period. And all of a sudden, by me listening and engaging and truly understanding what the style is, I found my style of playing. It was no longer just mechanical. It was actually my interpretation of what I wanted my sound to sound like. And that is what a lot of actors and creators and musicians and photographers are missing, their own style. So I won't harbor on this for too much longer, but know that your craft isn't built just inside. Where did my chat go? There we go. Your craft isn't built just inside of a box, just when you're practicing. It's built in the outside world. So go and live. So that way you can bring new information in to your work. All right. Business is not the same as artistry. These are two different things. And anybody who's in the chat, if you have a question, go ahead and put them in. I'm going to be answering all questions in a little bit of a Q&A at the end of this. And we are almost there, probably about another 20 minutes, and then ask all your questions. Business is not the same as artistry. These are two different things that keep getting confused, especially with a lot of the people I talk to and a lot of the people I work with. Business is completely different. That is, hey, okay, I have an audition for Disney and this director is doing it. Let me go back and see what this director has worked with. Let's say I'm auditioning for Tim Burton, right? Tim Burton isn't necessarily going to be the bubbly, the outgoing, the upright person. He's going to be maybe more dark, laid back. We all know Tim Burton. We all know the tone that Tim Burton productions usually go with. So understanding that, being able to research that, being able to understand, okay, who's casting in this, who's the actual director of this project, what channel is this going to be premiering on, what time slot is this going to be premiering on? So is it more adult? Are we talking about an adult swim production? Or is this prime time cartoon? Is this going to be more of a children type cartoon production? All of these things are important, and all of these things are the research for the business analytical mind. And then once you get into that script, you can kind of sort of shut that off. You go into the artistry mindset. Okay, who is my character? What is their motivation? Who am I working with here? What do they want at the end of the day? How were they raised? How were they bred? What are their character traits? This is very Stella Adler type things, understanding who this character is in your approach. Understanding that business and artistry are two separate things that can come together, but they're not always the same. If you approach business things from an artistry mindset, you're going to start to run into dead ends and walls, and same vice versa. So just know that these are two separate things, but you should be employing them together to get the most out of your auditions, your career. Mindset. You don't need to guess what the casting director is looking for. This is going back to that whole thing about your interpretation and yourself being key. So I'll keep this one brief. Stop trying to guess what the casting director is looking for. A lot of the time, the casting director doesn't even know what the casting director is looking for. It's not the casting director's job to have a predetermined choice. It's their job to sift through all of the auditions that they get and find who can and will be best for the role. So just know that it's not about you guessing. It's not about you saying, oh, I think they want this or I think they want this, because that's just going to dilute what you do at the end of the day. You need to just read down your spec sheet, figure out who this person is, what they want, how they're striving to get it, figure out the micro actions that they're taking to get it and what your blocking is, and deliver it in the way that is the most authentic to you. Lay that all out on the table. Say, thank you so much. I appreciate you for watching my interpretation or listening to my interpretation. And then that's it. Move on to the next one. Because trying to guess what a casting director wants is going to drive you mad because you can't read their mind. And most of the time, or some of the time, they don't even fully know what they want until they see it. Friendly, I'm coming from the construction industry, transition to voice acting. Are we subcontractors? So a lot of the time, what we are going to be is we're not exactly subcontractors. A lot of the time, the way that this process is going to work is you have the production. So let's say I have a project. I have a voiceover project that I want to cast. I'm going to hire out a casting director. I'm going to go to this casting director and say, hey, this is my vision. This is the tone that I'm going for. I'm looking for 3 characters for this project. 2 guys, 1 girl. I want you to send out my auditions and get a whole bunch of people back. This casting director might look into their network. They might look into the network of other people who they've worked with previously, and they'll send out all of these auditions, and then they'll get suitable auditions back. When they get suitable auditions back, they'll sift through it all, and that's where we come in. We're the person who's sending in that actual audition. We are just a freelancer on every project that we go on to. So we're the person who sends in the audition. The casting director is the middleman, or as like people like to call it, the gatekeeper to the actual director on the project. So we are, I hate saying we're at the bottom of the totem pole because that makes people think that we're at the lowest rung. We are still very important, but we are kind of at the end of that pipeline when it comes to us actually getting the gig. We are not work for hire. I have a talk about that. Work for hire is a detriment to us most of the time, but we are just the freelancers on any project we really go into. All right, we have about 5 more little topics on this, and then we're probably going to call it a day because I have auditions to get to today on this beautiful Monday. Not landing on audition means that you just weren't the vision, not that you were wrong. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is that we can't do this from inside of a vacuum. We need the ability to have other people tell us, other people who are in the industry, tell us what we did right or what we did wrong. Because if we do this in a vacuum, we're not going to have the perspective of people, or we're not going to have the perspective to understand that maybe some trends are gone, maybe some trends are out. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This is one of the worst things about voiceover. This is one of the worst things about being an actor in general. And this is absolutely hilarious. It was called dubbed the Chris Farley effect by a casting director who I took a class with. And the Chris Farley effect is this. Number 1, you go, who is Chris Farley? Number 2, you go, I like this sound of Chris Farley. Number 3, you go, oh my God, get me Chris Farley. I want to work with them. And then number 4, you go, get me someone who sounds like Chris Farley. I don't want to really have him on another project. He's everywhere now. And then number 5, it restarts and you go, wait, who's Chris Farley? This effect is very important for you to understand because this is a real thing, and it might be why you're not booking as much as you would like to. When you get into the prime time of these things, and this is why I say mindset, make your own projects, be your own creative director. When you get into a lot of creative projects and your voice gets everywhere, that means that it's very diluted. If I'm working for a project with Arby's, let's say I'm working in fast food, and then I go work in Burger King, and then I go work in McDonald's, and my voice is everywhere across all of these fast food chains. A lot of the time, these creative directors, these heads, these CEOs, not necessarily CEO, they don't care. The head of the ad department will go, I've heard his voice everywhere. It's starting to get diluted. We need fresh talent. We need a fresh face. We need a fresh voice. And then they won't hire you. It's not because you're bad. It's not because anything with you changed. It's that the market changed. You're just in too many places. That's why I always advocate for all you can do is what you can do. Go in, do the audition, let it go, move on to the next. Because there are so many variables that we can't even see, that we don't even understand, that might be saying, oh, okay, we're not going to do you for this time, but we'll keep you in the docket for next time. So understand that. Can't climb a ladder without the first rung? Absolutely. We might be on the lowest end of that work ladder, but we are still a very important asset to it. Hey, Julio, hope that everything's good. Nice to see you again. Also, how did you handle voiceover work while traveling? Was it hard to schedule work? No. So this is a very travel-friendly job. A lot of the work that I do are commercials, and I work with some AAA video game studios, but also a lot of indie studios. And I just build a studio wherever I go. So I built a voiceover booth in my travel trailer, and then I just worked on the road. I've worked from the Grand Canyon. I need to put this on my website because this was actually really cool. I've worked with Disney in the Grand Canyon. I worked on a Marvel project in Sedona. Of course, I worked a bunch of projects in LA. I've worked with Go Squeeze in Atlanta, like all across the country. I've worked with different clients, and the beauty of this gig is that none of them knew where I was. None of them cared where I was, because at the end of the day, as long as your audio is sounding crisp and you know how to deliver a script, that's all that matters. This is a work from anywhere type gig, and it was beautiful. So basically, the way that I scheduled it out was in the mornings, I'd wake up, I'd handle all of my auditions. And if I had any client work in the afternoon, I would come through and do any client work. All you really need is a quiet environment so that you don't have a lot of outside noise coming in, and then just some acoustic treatment so that you have good quality sound, and you're good to go. It was actually a lot easier than working from my home studio, believe it or not. No response doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. Follow up. So this is one of the things that I need to make a class or need to make a talk about. A lot of voice actors have a problem with following up with people, and this is a mindset thing again. I suffered for this for a number of years, and I still do to this day sometimes. If you send out an email, whether that be to an agent, whether that be to a casting director, try and get on a roster, whether that be directly to a client, and you don't get an initial response, that doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. We're very, very, very email insensitive and very, very, very busy all the time. So when you get an email, unless it's something that you know is coming in or something that's piqued your interest, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to open up and read that email. We all have email inboxes with thousands, and I mean thousands of unread messages, unless you're like me and you always go through and click read on all of the unimportant ones, even if you don't read them. Whenever you're sending out communication with a casting director, with any of these people who you want to get in contact with, and you don't get a response, there's nothing wrong with you. They might not have read it. They might have read it and forgot to respond. We've all been there. We've all done that. It might have gone to spam. Like, there's a bunch of different types of things that can happen. So just keep following up. Send a follow-up email, let them know, hey, I'm still interested in working with you. I'm currently in the middle of doing this. Or even better, send a letter. If you send a letter, A, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get it. B, it's natural human curiosity. You're going to want to open it to see what's inside of the letter and have the correspondence. Like, a lot of people don't fully understand that going to conventions and sending gift baskets or care packages or letters is still a hugely great way of corresponding with people who you want to have a connection with. And typically, mailing letters or mailing addresses are just going to be on an agent's website anyway. There's nothing wrong with it. Hey, lawyer, hope that everything's well. Nice to see you again. I'm in between two options for coaches. Both are active in the area that I want to focus, but one is purely talent and the other does more casting. Any advice on which way I should lean? That is a very, very good question. Okay, so I have the perspective of having worked with both. I've worked with casting directors who teach, I've worked with agents who teach, and I worked with voiceover artists who teach. And It depends on where you are in your career and what you're trying to do. So, for example, if you're trying to work with an agent, or if you're stuck in between these three choices and you're trying to land an agent, I would recommend working with the casting director or the agent and not necessarily the voice actor. Why is this? Because the casting director and the agent, if you work with the agent, you're going to start to get a relationship with them. You're going to start to see how they like to process their auditions. What type of sound are they looking for? Are they currently looking for talent? And when you want to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking for an agent, you're going to already have that relationship with them. Relationship is one of the most important things when it comes to this industry. So if you're already working with a casting director or you're already working with an agent, they're already going to know your talent. They're already going to know what you bring to the table. Now, this completely shifts. If this is your first rodeo, if you're just getting into voiceover and you don't have that much confidence in your talent yet, I recommend working with a voiceover artist. If you work with a voiceover artist first, they can help bring you up to snuff on what actually is popular in the industry. They can bring you up to snuff on what the actual not the industry, but what acting really is, what it actually looks like. They can start to actually talk you through all of these things so that you can then work with that casting director and that agent and have a little bit more polish. So it just really depends on what you're looking for. But I always recommend working with at least active voiceover artist, someone who's actively in the industry, or a casting director. And that's because trends change over time. It used to be a couple years back that everyone wanted someone to sound like a radio DJ. They wanted someone to be able to talk at someone in a fast, engaging, ready to go tone. And now in 2024, people just want someone who's laid back like I am. They want someone who's talking to a friend. They want someone who's just chatting. So, hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just telling you about this thing. And if you want to go out and get it, that's cool. We just chatting like friends. If you're working with somebody who's not actively in the industry, they might not know that. They might be really high quality when it comes to the acting, which is very good, but not when it comes to how to land a gig in this market in 2024. So I always recommend at least work with somebody who is actively auditioning and actively landing work in this landscape. But that's a great question, Lawyer. I hope I answered your question. All right, we got two more things to go over today. If you have any questions, please leave them below. And like I said before, if you need any type of help, please go over to www.thatvoicebox.com. You can go to the education section of my website and download a free guide to how to break down, or how I like to break down scripts, and how to understand the online pay-to-play and free-to-play voiceover landscape. Those are both free of charge. Just head over to www.thatvoicebox.com to get your free stuff. All right, last of two. You don't need an agent to be successful. You don't need a manager to be successful. You don't need a publicist to be successful. You don't need any of these people to be successful. Now, you might want them, and we'll go over a little bit in the next point why you might want them and why they might do very well for you. But a lot of the time, people say, oh, I really want an agent. That's how I know that my career will take off, when I have an agent. An agent does one thing. They give you access to higher end jobs, not higher quality. You can have an indie studio who is really high quality, higher end jobs. An agent is that gatekeeper who Disney goes to them. They don't put out a public casting call. They go to an agent and they say, send this out, this audition out. If you're not repped by an agent or with an agency, you will not see these casting calls. You will not see these auditions. You will not have them. That is it, right? If you sign up to Backstage, it's going to give you, yeah, you're going to see auditions, but it's still going to be a lot of college productions, a lot of indie work. And every so often, people will launch out a cattle call, which is send it far and wide. We just want to bring in new talent. It doesn't matter if it's from everywhere. So though every so often you'll get a cattle call from like a Disney or a Marvel property or something like that. But 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, you need an agent. But that does not mean you can't have a fulfilling career without one. Like I said, I've worked in AAA video games. I've worked with indie animation. I've worked on pilot projects for huge networks, still under NDA, but I don't have an agent. Am I working to get one? Yes, because my career and my scope is pointing me towards what I want one for. But I don't want one just to have an agent because that's useless. Understand what you want to do and know that even without an agent, you can still get great gigs. And last but not least, this is the last point. So if you have any questions, please put them down below. You should strive to put together a team to help push your career forward. Why do I say this? That manager that I said that you don't need, that agent that I said that you don't need, that publicist that I said that you don't need are all pieces of a team that can help push your career forward if you want to go down that route. But it's up to you to decide what route that you want to go down. If you want to go down that route of having a manager, a publicist, having an agent, understand that you are going to be upfront at the minimum losing 15, 30, 40, about 45% of your actual, and a lawyer, about 45 to 50 sometimes percent of your actual fee of your pay. An agent will take 15 to 20%. Your manager is 15 to 20%. Maybe your publicist is taking an upfront fee, or maybe they're taking it off the back end as well. And then you have to pay taxes. You're going to be out. You're going to be out like 60%. But going down this route can help you make it so that your career is on that trajectory that you want to go down. If you say, I just want to be a voice actor who does meaningful projects, works with great people, and at the end of the day, that's all that I want. You don't need any of those people. Without any of them, I've done meaningful projects that I have absolutely loved that have made an impact and made a huge difference. You don't need any of the people who I have previously talked about. You don't need a manager, publicist, agent, lawyer. You're good. You might want a lawyer to look over contracts, but you're good. If you say, I want to be a major movie star working with Disney, working on Netflix productions, on Amazon productions. And I want to be the name that people think about when they say this. I want to work with Studio Ghibli. I want to work with all of these amazing. You need an agent. You might want a manager. If you want to go on a press tour, you might need a publicist. It just depends on what you want to do at the end of the day. But that does not mean that these people, these members of your team are necessary, but they will be necessary depending on what you want to do. I always recommend to create a Avengers team, so to speak, a team of people who you love you, want to push forward your career, and who work with you to do that. Because working alone is not going to get you very far at all. Thanks for all the videos. Oh, thank you so much, Friendly. I appreciate that. Real copywriters, good morning. I'm on ACX Find a Way, Voices, Upwork, etc. to no avail. I need work. That is one of the hardest places to be, real copywriters. I feel you on that, and it is a legitimate place to be. It is an absolutely legitimate place to be. To have diversified yourselves across a bunch of websites, which I say is a good thing. It's good to have diversification, but not to be landing roles is a morally debilitating place to be. And I feel for you. One of the things that I will say is maybe it's time to spend one session working with a coach so that you can see, oh, this is simply why I'm not landing these gigs. It can be a simple tweak. And here's one thing. If you have any samples, if you have a demo, go ahead and send me an email. Email me at info@jtheva.com. I'll put my email address right here. Go ahead and email me a link so that I can check out your work, because a lot of people don't understand. It could be a small tweak that you need to make in order to actually start to see the fruits of your labor come forth. Because like I said, I'm not sure if you were here before when we were talking about the difference between business and artistry, but sometimes it's less about your artistry that's the problem and more so about the business. And what I mean by that is it could simply be you're not approaching it in the way that is popular at the moment right now. And sometimes it can be that you need more work. One of the last things that I'll say before we head out for today is the pandemic hit, and it really created a wave of people needing work from home jobs. Completely understandable. I needed one as well. It's why I became a voiceover artist. But it also started a wave of hucksters saying, oh, you can do this without any background work, without any background skill. It's a get rich quick, work from home. You don't need any skill type of job because the barrier to entry for voiceover work is pretty low. A lot of people don't think that it is, but it's pretty low. Like if you get all the pro gear, yeah, that'll set you back, let's say like 3 grand. But you can get into this industry for like 500 bucks and get a very solidly good sound. But the skills that it takes for you to be able to do it take easily a year, 2 years, 3 years to be able to learn. So maybe it's just time for you to get with a coach and they'll be able to speed run you through that so that you can start to see where to change. And like I said, send me an email. I'll send you a link to my Google Docs. Perfect. Send that over and I'll go ahead and look over it. And I will send a brief description of what could be changed or tweaked a little bit to fall more in line with the business format versus the artistry format. But thank you guys so much. It was lovely hanging out with you all on this wonderful Monday. The last thing I'll say about mindset before we go out and do what we have to do for today is you are no less of an amazing artist, creative person, creator, just because you're not landing work. You create you have the ability and the bravado to bring something into this world. And I know this might sound a little woo woo, but you can bring things that never existed into this world, in this world, with just your mind, with your hands, with your vision, and with your tools. And that is absolutely pivotal to our continued enjoyment on this world. As an artist in many different disciplines, I didn't truly find who I was as an artist until 15 years down the line. I just 3 years ago or 4 years ago now found out that I loved voiceover work. And I never did voiceover a day in my life. I did stage work and I was an actor on stage, but I never did voiceover. And I fell in love with this career. But it took me a solid year to a year and a half before I started landing work. In that interim, I never saw myself as not an artist, not a voiceover artist. I was working towards being a commercially viable voiceover artist, but that didn't mean that I was not a voiceover artist. So understand that just because you're not landing work yet doesn't mean that you're any less of a creative person and doesn't mean that your worth as an artist is any less. But thank you guys so much for joining in on another Monday live stream. It's lovely chatting with you guys. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please send me an email at any time. Download any of the assets that I have on the website that I've linked. It's in the description and it's in the chat. And I'll catch you guys next Monday. Have a nice one.